Hi, I'm Mark Palmer with the Illinois Supreme Court Commission on Professionalism. I'm thrilled to welcome you to the first episode of the Reimagining Law video series. In each episode, we will bring you personal stories and practical tips on how legal professionals are reimagining the delivery of legal services amid the coronavirus pandemic. Our goal is to provide you with the tools and support you will need to better face these challenges during these uncertain times. In this first episode, I'm joined by Champaign County Circuit Clerk Katie Blakeman. Katie and I will discuss the challenges her office has faced lately, along with other circuit clerks across the land of Lincoln. Katie, thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, one routine theme I keep hearing among all these brand new coronavirus webinars and such is really the importance of communication. I mean, that's where everything starts. How is communication changed at your office, and how are you reaching the public, both the public and the legal community lately?
Sure. So typically, when we're open, when the courthouse is open, we have 37 staff members, and we have phones on all day long, and we are answering typically about 300 phone calls a day, and that's with a full staff. And when the staff are, we don't have designated staff answering calls anymore. We used to have just designated phone staff, and now prior to this, we had spread it out among all staff and had people routed to different departments. Of course, we are not fully staffed right now. And that was one of the primary ways we were able to answer questions from the public. So we are rotating, keeping below 10 people here per day. And because we're all in one space and kind of scrunched together, we're really trying to spread out as much as possible. We are still answering phones, but we're not really able to have them on all day because we have so few people here. So we've really started thinking creatively about how we can reach the public, because we know the circuit clerk's office is the first place that people look to. Really, we have the most interaction with the public. So we've really promoted using our public email address. We have a banner on our website that directs people to email us rather than call. And we've changed our phone message so it has a lot of the information that people are looking for. Yes, we're closed. These are the things we're doing. These are the things we're not doing. You should be in contact with your attorney. And some of those basic things just even in our phone message. And then our website has a great deal of information. We're continually updating that. And then the county has a specific COVID-19 page. And our page, of course, has a banner to direct people to that. And then social media. We've had social media channels for quite a while for the office, but we've added some. I've had for the office a Facebook and Twitter account and Instagram account for a while. Facebook and Twitter, I had been using. Instagram, not so much. But now I'm using all of those and more. We also added a YouTube channel, and that's where we've begun posting some how-to videos, some things. The first one I created was just how to find everything on our website and what kinds of things you can do online. As opposed to if you can't come into the courthouse, here's what you can do online.
Yeah, and we're fortunate, as I said, you're also in Champaign-Urbana. We're kind of a mid-sized metropolis in the state of Illinois, but there's 102 counties across our state that are much, much smaller. Have you talked to other clerks about how they are changing up communications and how that has been difficult maybe for them?
Yes. Well, I think it's been really difficult for a lot of the smaller counties that, they may have only 3 staff members. So they're really trying to, some counties, maybe the chief deputy and the clerk themselves are rotating who is there each day, so they're not overlapping in case one person gets sick. And then some of them have set up call forwarding so that if they are not in the office, then those calls are routed to them. I have seen more and more clerks using social media to get that information out. It would be helpful if the circuits were doing more of that, from the circuit level. The Supreme Court has been communicating things, but because, of course, each circuit might have different rules, they might send a press release with that administrative order, but the general public doesn't understand that information. So translating that into plain language has been a challenge for all of us, and we know we're the ones that typically are doing that. We're communicating that to the public. In Champaign also, we have an attorney listserv, so that's a great way for us to get information out to attorneys. I think that's pretty common. Most counties do have a bar association email group that they can email things out to. But the biggest thing I think most clerks are struggling with is either that getting those court dates rescheduled in bulk, getting those notices out, but then the uncertainty of not knowing when those dates might actually happen. So do you send out notices to everyone and then send notices out again in 2 weeks?
Yeah, that was kind of leading me to my next question. What's kind of been your biggest challenge, and how have you addressed that? And one thing that came to mind with me, and I get a lot of your emails personally because I operate out of Champaign, but I see this where you have these orders come out from either local judges or circuit-wide, or the entire state Supreme Court are issuing an order. But just like you said, even though they try to write it in a way for everyone to understand easily, the typical courthouse patron may see that and their eyes gloss over and say, well, what does that mean for me personally, my case? What do I need to do next? Or I don't want to miss out on something or get in trouble.
Right.
How do I do that? And that's where they probably just pick up a phone or shoot an email to you, say, and ask the same question that's answerable from that order, but you have to say it in their terms and their way to understand it, right?
Yes, that's exactly what we've been doing. So all of our emails that we're getting, the majority of those emails are things like, I understand the courthouse is closed, but I was supposed to appear in court for this this felony pretrial hearing. Does that mean that I don't show up because I don't want to go to jail because I didn't show up? Or they are filing for divorce and not knowing whether they will get a court date for that. And I had a heartbreaking email from a family that had an adoption scheduled, and it had taken so much time to get that hearing scheduled in the first place. And they understand the reasoning behind it, but it's still just really heartbreaking. And no one is communicating that information to those patrons other than, a press release from the circuit that goes out. And so we are, as an association, we're the Clerks Association, we're in constant communication with one another, sometimes calling each other at home or on our cell phones with children in the background often, and saying, okay, what are you guys doing? How are you communicating this? I saw a great example from Kankakee County, actually, had a chart that they created that were posting and on their social media accounts showing if your felony pretrial date was this, it is now this. And they just created a chart and published that. And so I have asked if we could do the same here in Champaign County. It is challenging when each judge has the ability to set dates for their own, they control the calendar in their own courtroom. So unless they're working together to have a cooperative effort to make sure that that's consistent, those kinds of things are difficult to do. So yeah.
And I would think that this will definitely lead to courthouses and clerks' offices and even judges themselves maybe really pushing for and advocating the use of other means of communication rather than you have to proactively or reactively, I should say, look up your case or look up some notice, as opposed to what I know some counties have done where they have, for example, text message notification tools that maybe are in beta stage still, but have been effective from what I've heard, but obviously those things cost money and take time and resources to develop and test and implement. But do you see those types of resources maybe stepping more to the forefront because of all this?
Absolutely. I know, actually, Champaign County we've had a notification system in beta testing for some time, and we were just about to launch right before all of this happened. But we have actually, in some ways, we decided to hold off because right now, if you were to get a text message, that court date would be incorrect. And we don't want to see people coming into the courthouse thinking they're supposed to be there until all those dates are actually reset. But that, I think, is going to be an excellent way to communicate with people. It does require patrons to opt in, because in Illinois, you cannot send unsolicited text messages. So there are some challenges with that, with getting people to opt in. But I think now is the perfect time to get that engagement and buy-in into a program like that. We just need to make sure all those dates are set before we start sending people reminders of when they might be. But I think now is a great time to think creatively about how we can better communicate with the public and with court patrons. And it seems as though the judiciary is more open to these ideas than usual, and it's out of necessity. But if something good can come out of this, that would be that perhaps now we can implement some of these processes and continue them after we reopen.
Yeah. I think that's obviously the big part, is changing the mindset is one of the most difficult things. And then the technology, the hardware, the resources, the funding usually can follow from that. But if you can't get over that first hurdle, it's bound to fail from the get-go, it seems. And having that buy-in from leadership at different levels, not only the state Supreme Court, but almost more importantly, your local judges and bar association and local lawyers and the public, which is great. What if any ideas to that end do you have that you could communicate to lawyers or bar associations or even legal aid organizations like Land of Lincoln in downstate or Prairie State Legal in Northern Illinois? How can they make your job easier or make the communication streams better?
I think, if that jurisdiction hasn't had, if a legal aid organization can do some of that translation, the translation of those administrative orders, and help educate the public about what that means. We are pretty, we're doing the best we can to answer those questions, but information coming from legal aid organizations and bar associations, I think, is well trusted as well. And so if those organizations are sharing information from the courts rather than just, I've seen a lot of retweeting an administrative order, and that's great. It's nice to share the information and spread it, but if they can help us to distill that information in a way that the public can understand, I think that would be really helpful. And then for attorneys, communicating regularly with your clients, saying, this is what I know, here's what I know, and here's what I think it's going to look like when things reopen. We're doing the best we can to communicate that information as it happens. We are having in Champaign County, and I think this is pretty common throughout the state, we're having meetings once a week, kind of a status meeting of all department heads in the courthouse and saying, okay, here's where we are. So we have all the primary stakeholders. And I hope that level of communication continues after this crisis, because it has been really helpful in moving things forward that we need to get done quickly. And so I think we probably will see that continue for a while, and it has really elevated the communication between those departments, which has been nice to see.
Yeah, and exactly the words I started this conversation with. Communication is so key, and I'm glad you raised that with lawyers. Even need to be proactive about communicating with their clients. Not only is it an ethical obligation to keep your client informed, obviously, but if they're calling you to ask about something, then you've probably waited too long already. They should know that information firsthand from you from the get-go. They should be the ones having those orders, as we say, quote unquote, translated for them, and let them worry about other things in these uncertain times, of course.
Right.
Thinking big picture, anything else that you think your office or other circuit clerks around the state see changing and being impacted by COVID-19?
I do think that this, as I have said before, I think this is an opportunity to think creatively and to, we can continue to broaden the use of technology, out of necessity during this time, but I can see that continuing after all of this is over. I think that increasing the use of online payments, I've had several colleagues send me messages or communicate with one another about, hey, do you guys take online payments for this? What can we do to reduce the number of people who have to come in and pay cash? We accept online payments already in Champaign County, but only for limited types of cases. The way the Supreme Court has authorized online payments and pleas of guilty in traffic cases, we're only right now able to accept payments on may appear traffic and criminal cases. So we're working on a project that would allow us to accept payments for things like copies. When a person has copy requests, right now they have to come in and hand us some cash or pay in person or mail us a check, and then we mail them the copies back. And we have the capability to email those documents. So if there were a mechanism for people to pay for copies or record searches electronically, then we could do that. We could go do that going forward, and that would be easier for us anyway. So I think this is just a good time for us to focus on those kinds of projects. It's also I think the role of the Clerks Association, we tend to be the association that brings ideas to the court because I think we have the most interaction with the general public. So we see things and bring them to the court and say, hey, I don't know if you've noticed this, but these are all the questions that we're getting. We're getting a lot of questions about orders of protection, and can you help us create some more resources for the public for orders of protection? Or we have seen some relaxing of some rules for remote appearances. We've gotten some guidelines from the Supreme Court about remote appearances, so perhaps we can put some processes in place to continue that. So remote appearances that do the attorneys from Blit and Gaines in Chicago have to come down to Champaign for all of their small claims cases? I don't know if that's really a good use of everyone's time for them to physically appear in court every time they have a huge small claims call. And so those are some things that I think that we'll continue to see, that big picture things that we're thinking about. But a lot of the circuit clerk's offices, though, I would say are really right now just focused on survival. They have so few staff, and they're really struggling with getting all of those notices out, or just handling there is still quite a bit of work that needs to be done. If people are bonding out, we have to process those bond payments, we have to process bond refunds, and we still hear from attorneys about their bond assignments. And I would say, please be patient. We're doing the best we can. So those are some of the things we're doing, focused on survival, but then thinking creatively about how we can better serve the public, because that's what we do, is serve the public.
You're definitely learning as you go. I appreciate that. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much, Katie, Circuit Clerk, Champaign Circuit Clerk, Katie Blakeman. Thank you for joining us on our very first Reimagining Law.
Anytime. Happy to do it.
You'll find more information in the description down below with links. Please like this video and share it with others who may benefit. And please subscribe to our channel to stay up to date on the most recent episodes. Thank you for watching. Be safe, be well, and we'll see you again soon.